Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our AP Academy Professional Development session today. My name is Allie Michael. I'm the Coordinator for Academic Services and Engagement, and we're so happy that you're with us this afternoon to talk about a very important and timely topic. So I do want to just let you know that we have someone else from our office on the call too. That's Rachel Carroll. She's our office manager for our office and seems like everybody else on this campus. Rachel keeps us all going. So she and I will be monitoring the chat box. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll monitor that for you. I do want to let you know about our last AP Academy session, which is scheduled for April 20th. That's 2 weeks on a Tuesday, April 20th, and we'll have the academic year wrap-up session, and President Licari will actually be with us on that call. So that's an important one you won't want to miss. And that's at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, April 20th. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Joe Baldwin, who is our Director of Student Conduct and Case Management here at Austin Peay, and a great resource to have. And she's going to talk with us today about working with students in crisis. So take it away, Joe.
All right, so welcome. As Ellie said, I'm Joe. I work over in the Student Affairs office, and my office reports to the Dean of Students in Student Affairs. So Greg Singleton, many of you all are familiar with him. So I want to talk with you a little bit about students in crisis, but I kind of started going down this rabbit hole, and I was like, okay, we know that students have crises, right? Like everyone's human. We all have them. They pop up at very inopportune times, but also we have students who are just kind of difficult. And so sometimes I want to talk about both of those things kind of together, because I think sometimes we don't think necessarily whatever is happening with them is a crisis, but it does maybe warrant some additional help or resources for them. So I just want to make sure that you all as faculty know what those resources are, how to have conversations that will, like high risk conversations that have good outcomes. Because what I've found, especially in the last year and a half, is that we are all stressed out. We are all operating on like a 10.5 emotionally on a scale of 10. And so when we're in a bad place and our students are in a bad place, we react sometimes that in ways that are not healthy for our own personal self or for our students. So just want to kind of chat through a couple of those things. And I was super excited. I got the well-being assessment. Our students actually did a well-being assessment in the fall, and we just got we just got our results. So this was so timely to kind of give you some perspective, as well as kind of on what students are facing with their mental health and kind of where they are with everything. So let's see here. All right. So a crisis, it's a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. I wanted to give the definition because I think when I say crisis, all these other things pop into my head. But this is just a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger for a person or a family. And so obviously, we are all living in a crisis. So again, very timely to do this presentation. But I want to take a minute and kind of give you some kind of context clues about what a crisis might look like or how it might manifest itself in our classrooms. So for our students, sometimes that's going to look like they don't care, they're not engaged in their coursework, they're missing classes, they're not doing their work, they send emails, they want immediate responses. So I've gotten so many reports this semester from faculty that are like, this student found out they were exposed and they needed a Zoom link and they sent me 15 emails during class. And I'm not checking my emails during class, right? But they're freaking out. We're all in this state of, so we need to, so understanding that the disordered writing, aggressive language, change in appearance or behavior. Generally speaking, around midterm, we're going to see people kind of fall off the radar, or we're going to have some folks who get academically alerted because midterm grades were due and now they know that they're failing all of their classes. And so they're freaking out, right? So you add all of those kinds of things that would normally be a stressor, and then you add it on top of like a crisis situation that we're all living through. And it's kind of like lint to a fire, right? Like it's just, we're all kind of in the state of like, we could combust at any moment. So I want you to take a minute, and if you'll go ahead and do the menti.com, you should see some fields that have opened up for you. And I want you to, I think I gave you 3 responses. So just put in like some adjectives that you would use to describe your students. Okay. All right. So awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you for playing. Please continue to add words. I think this is awesome. So yeah, I totally overcommitted is a big giant word. That means it's been put it in more than once. And that's probably true. And when we add in sort of the situation that we're in right now with the pandemic, and you have people who are juggling families, and they have children at home, and they're they signed up with all this hope in their heart at the beginning of spring that they were going to be able to be in-person classes, but then the schools have shifted back and forth out of in-person and virtual school for their younger children. You've got people who have lost loved ones during this time. You've got people who have been exposed to the virus, who have been told you can't come to campus. You've got all these things, right? Like there's all these things. People who signed up for online or virtual learning because they knew that they were maybe immunocompromised, or they have a family member who's immunocompromised living in their home, and they don't do well online. They don't understand that technology. There's all kinds of things that happen with our students. And a lot of times what happens in those situations is we kind of throw our hands up in there. We're like, well, and I'm not talking about faculty specifically, I'm talking about students, us humans in general. Like when we're frustrated, when we're stressed out, when we're shutting down, when we're worried about learning online, when we're overwhelmed, we kind of just go, I can't do this, and walk away, right? And so our students are not different from us in any way, and they're humans. They are anxious. And so I wanted to kind of do this activity because I think it's really important for us to all kind of see, like, number one, we're not all alone thinking these things, right? But also kind of put some context behind that. Because I think sometimes we're doing our job, right? We're trying to teach them, we're trying to have, real dialogue in a classroom, and it's kind of not existent right now, right? That's hard to facilitate right now, because I think people are just worn out. And so this is a really important topic. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning that we sent out the well-being assessment in the fall. 846, yeah, 846 of our students filled out this survey. Can you just guess at what percentage of students reported feeling anxious, nervous, or on edge every day or over half the days? Okay, you got the answer correct. So it's actually over 75%. It was more like 76.8, I think, percent of that sample of students basically are living their life in this state of like fight or flight, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of days of feeling like you don't have control, that you are just a ball of anxiety. So that's a huge number, and something I think is just worth you all kind of knowing what they self-reported. I want to take you through what this looks like and what this means. So again, this is from that well-being assessment. And essentially what we're looking at, the gray bar in each of these graphs are our sister institutions, and the green bar is us. And that negative number means that our students are feeling less happy, less self-esteem, less life satisfaction than students that took the same survey at other institutions that are like ours. So things like I'm feeling in good spirits, or I'm satisfied with myself, or I'm, satisfied with my life. I get things I need, or things I want, those kinds of things. All of those, our students are actually feeling less positive about what's happening right now than other students at other institutions. And then this, I was like, oh, positivity. No, this is also bad, y'all. Our students are more depressed, more anxious, more socially anxious, and lonely than students at other institutions. And so again, knowing that we're, at the point that they took the survey, we were 6 months into the pandemic. And so this is kind of frightening, right? So, and I would wonder, this made me wonder, maybe we should do this with our faculty and staff, because I think we would see very similar numbers with our faculty and staff. So these are scary numbers to me. And so something that we need to, and then again, our optimism and our perseverance, they view themselves as they're scoring much lower than folks at other institutions. And so that's scary. We're not in a good place with mental health right now. And so that adds some other pressure too. Like, we know that when people are not in a good mental health space, that we can do all kinds of irrational things. So this is scary. This is not good news.
Hey, Joe,
Yes.
we did have a question in the chat that I wanted to bring up, since
Sure.
it's very related to that information. Do we know why our students are feeling worse than other schools? Was there any sort of qualitative data or anything like
So
that?
there was, and I haven't, there were, 846 students were able to add lots of context to their answers. And so these were kind of the snapshots from that. And I'm going through that qualitative data now and trying to pick out trends. And I'm happy to maybe come back another time and kind of go through some of that to add some context. But I think overall they're feeling like there is a lack of empathy on behalf of the institution for their stressors. We're caught between, being a an institution that needs to provide an education, but also knowing, that all of us that are on this call are living, breathing humans that work here that need paychecks. And so there are lots of, if one thing is good, might be good for our students, and it might not be great for our staff. So kind of all of those balances. There was, a lack of understanding of their issues and why some of those issues might be not be maybe worthy of someone's grace. And so I think when we come out of this, I'm hopeful we'll do this again when we're not in this kind of stressful environment, because I don't know if we don't know either what the baseline would have been had we done this well-being survey, last fall, pre-pandemic. This could be lots of things, but those were some of the things that I wrote down some of the stuff. Lack of compassion. Students are reporting at a high rate that the workload has increased substantially through the pandemic, and it may not have, but they feel it has. It might be because they're having to do more reading because they're not in lecture in person, or they have to kind of do a little bit more than what they remember having to have done before. So all of those things. We also had a lot of folks say that the university has done a fantastic job and that we're really, we had lowest numbers in the state in terms of, quarantined and positive cases. And so we were obviously doing some things well, administratively trying to, slow the spread and those kinds of things. So there's like so many comments on the survey, and I am working through them. But those were kind of some of the themes that I immediately started to pick up. Excuse me. So I wanted us to kind of more as a group kind of talk through this situation, because I think that will be helpful. Like, these are real things that have happened. And so I want us as kind of like a group discussion. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen in a minute, but the case study is just this. A student in your class has written in their journal that they are living in their car and they often do not have enough food to eat. You've noticed that they have been missing a lot of class and are concerned. What do you do? What resources are available to this group, to this student on campus? And so I'm going to stop sharing so that we can all see each other's faces easily. But what do you guys think? What are some, what do we do in this situation?
Well, we have the option to fill out the, is it the person of concern form? I always forget the proper name because I've never actually had to do one, thank God. But you can fill out that form and it comes to you.
Yes, yep. So student of concern form on the Student Affairs website.
Well, I had something kind of like this. I don't think this student was living in his car, but it was definitely a mental health situation. I wasn't sure what to do, so I called my immediate supervisor. They sent him to you. They sent him they sent you copies of the email. And in one of our departmental meetings not long ago, they were talking about that there are actually resources on campus to provide food for students. I'm not sure about housing. Is there a help with housing as well?
Yes.
Who would you contact?
The housing office.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll talk about all of those, but I think one of the things, and obviously, student affairs, we know our group of people and resources, but sometimes I think we forget to like scream those things from the mountaintops so that faculty know about those things, right? So for this specific student, I would certainly, if you all know of a student who is living in an unsafe condition, whether that's because they are homeless, they literally don't have anywhere to live, or they're living with people who may not be, it might not be a healthy environment, whether there's like domestic violence or some sort of abuse happening, please fill out a student of concern form. And I'll show you at the end of this, I'll take you through and show you how to get to that website. It's super easy to find. It's super easy to submit. But also specifically for the homelessness and food insecurity stuff, our Center for Service Learning and Community Engagement has a food pantry on campus that is free for students to go get fresh produce, eggs, just snack food. There's a clothing bank over there for business attire. They have all kinds of resources over there, to include grants that students do not have to pay back. And so those things are super important. The other thing that I would say too is our housing office. Obviously it costs money to live on campus, right? So we're not trying to further financially stress students. However, living on campus and making a financial arrangement with the housing office is better than living in your car. It's better than living in an unsafe environment. And so we'll work that financial piece out later, but our first priority should be getting our student in a space where they are safe and where they can have the things that they need, like food and shelter and showers. The amount of students that we know that use the FOI for their daily bathing needs, I think most people would be shocked at the amount of students we have who do not have a place to live. And so those students should never have to do that, right? We'll find resources for them, we'll figure it out, but we can't do that if we don't know they exist. And unfortunately, you all have the most high touch impact with students in your classrooms. You're the folks who are seeing them 3 times a week, maybe 2 times a week, whatever the case may be, depending on your schedule. And so you all might know these things that we aren't aware of. So those kinds of resources. So that's what I would do. And I'll show you, again, I'll show you all how to get to that form to report that. And always, if you have a concern or you're not really sure, please call. Myself or Dean Singleton are always here. And so we are always ready to, provide you some resources or talk you through a situation and give you some advice on how to best counsel a student in that kind of situation. Are there any questions about that?
Joe, can I add something?
Sure.
Sorry, it's Mary Catherine. What I'd like to add is something that I found absolutely wonderful about APSU is that the SOS Center does have a delivery system or delivery option, I think 1 day a week. Last time I checked, it was 1 day a week for students who are quarantining at home.
Yes.
and they have nobody to go get them food. They can go online, fill out everything they want, and it has to be within a considerate. Sorry, losing my words here. It can't be Nashville. They won't drive to Nashville to deliver food. And
Yeah,
I can't think the right phrase right there.
Clarksville city limits.
Yeah. Thank you.
Close. Yeah.
So, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I don't know if we still have funds, but at the end of last semester, we were trying to give out money to students so that they would have money to go eat in the dining room. And so there were some really good resources coming out of the SOS Center.
Yes. And like I said, that the money that the SOS Center has is free money. So like, I'm going to talk about the Miller loan, but the Center for Community or for Service Learning and Community Engagement, that money, if they're able to help a student with their rent or their light bill or their water bill or whatever, they don't have to pay that money back. And obviously those funds are limited and they go really quickly. But I always tell students, before you do anything silly, like go get a cash advance or take out a loan or whatever, check all of those resources first, because we don't want to put an extra burden that we know that they're not going to be able to meet on them. Let's see. So the second example, I think, is something that happens also quite often on our campus, which is a student on your class is on your last nerves. They interrupt you during your lecture. They answer questions for other students. They're aggressive. They're loud. They've missed classes, but they come in like they know all the things. You submit their midterm grades. The student is academically alerted. Student doesn't understand that academic alert because everything they've turned in, they've received passing grades on. He shows up early to class to have a conversation with you about this, and you are busy trying to get focused to start your class, and tell him, hey, I'm not doing this right now. We can't have this conversation. I'm trying to prepare. And he storms out of your classroom. So what happens now?
Well, you definitely need to give him your office hours. I always give my students, email, even my phone number, so they can call me about things like that. Probably might report him. I can't remember. Again, I always call my immediate supervisor, Vicky, and say, where do I report this? And sometimes the chairman of the department will send them an email saying inappropriate behavior, disrespect for the professor, that kind of thing. And this has happened. This has happened to me. And a lot of times I'll get an apology. Usually students nowadays want to email you or text you. They don't want to talk to you in person. So, and if they email me an apology, I will accept that, just like a regular apology. But also maybe even refer them to the mental health center, because obviously they do have some mental issues going on if they're going to act that way to someone in authority. So, you just don't get mad though, even if you're fed up.
Yeah.
Even though you feel like you could.
This situation did not end well. I'll just say that it didn't end well for the faculty member. It did not end well for the student. And so I think a couple of things. One is, if a student is having poor classroom behavior consistently, you probably need to address it before you get to a point that you're unable to communicate appropriately with a student. And so that means maintaining your professionalism. I'm always a little bit taken aback when grownups don't always maintain their grown-up stature. I understand it 100%. I deal with frustrating people all the time. But it's always really important that you maintain your professionalism in a classroom, whether the student is getting on your nerves or not. But the other thing is that if you wait for something massive to happen where there's a blow up, and then and there's no coming back from that, right? So I always err on the side of, like, if you're having a problematic student and you have addressed that privately with the student, like, hey, I noticed that you're cutting me off, or I would really appreciate it if you could hold your questions till the end, or those kinds of interactions, and the student continues to be disrespectful, that warrants a report to this office. And it's not necessarily, and I should say, a referral, not a report, because I think sometimes folks don't want to necessarily get people in trouble, but if you're letting a situation kind of spin out of control, and you're not talking with people about how to maybe curb that behavior, then you're asking for something bad to happen. And so definitely, if you're having a problem student, report it early. And if we can intervene, with you or on behalf of you, and say, hey, these specific actions that you're having in class are not appropriate for the college level. And so we need to have a conversation about proper classroom behavior. We have so many different types of students, right? We've got really high achieving folks that are in a classroom who are always going to do the right thing and say the right thing and behave appropriately. We've got adult learners who are grown-ups with children who think that you aren't owed any additional respect because you are the professor in a classroom. And I might not be able to change their mind about that, but they think because I am a grown-up adult with my own children, I am also not going to be disrespected by you because you have a title in front of your name and I don't. And so there's lots of stuff, right, that happens when we're thinking about the identities that we carry along with us when we're in different spaces. And so I think sometimes, especially in the classroom, we as employees of the university think, oh, well, I have earned the right or the, stature that no one is going to talk to me in a way that I don't like. But that's not true. That doesn't mean it's okay. I'm certainly not excusing bad behavior. But if you're having those issues in a classroom and you're not addressing it along the way or giving warning that this behavior is not appropriate, then it's going to snowball. It's like one of those, it's a snowball down a hill. You can't stop it once it starts rolling. And if you accept some bad behavior, and maybe you're having a bad day and then it blows up, and then there's some irreversible things that happen. So always, if you're having a problem with a specific student and it's ongoing, please make a referral to our office because we can kind of intervene on that beginning end. So that would be advice number one. Advice number two would be and we'll talk a little bit about this because I have some tips about having those conversations. Referring someone to this office does not mean that we are going to suspend them, that I'm going to tell them they're not allowed in your classroom. It doesn't mean that there is going to be necessarily a disciplinary action against the student. Sometimes all it takes is like a really good educational conversation about specific behaviors. And so I want to make sure that you all know that. And then on that same note, and I always say this in faculty training, you are only allowed to exclude a student from your classroom for one class period. And if you do that, you must report that to our office because all students are required to get due process regardless of the situation. So I just always like to make sure that I am clear about that. You are not allowed to banish someone from your classroom. You can have them leave early, but you can't kick them out of your class. They do actually get a process to go through. If something is that significant and we need to handle it in a disciplinary fashion, we'll do that through our office. But as faculty, you don't have that ability to really kick someone out. Let's see. So some other things to know, all students who have impairments to their either mental health or to the physiological part of their brain do not always register with disability services. So in this specific instance, this student had a traumatic brain injury and did not have the capacity to respond appropriately to this faculty member and felt like they were not listening to them. And basically the response to the faculty member was like, I need you to help me understand this. And the person just kept repeating the same words over and over. And sometimes things take some reframing or saying things in a way that another person can understand, which is another reason I always say it's really good to refer, especially if you're in a situation with a student where you feel like you're not getting through, because sometimes just a change of the way something is addressed can be very helpful in these situations. And so obviously for this situation, I would say you would need to submit a report to our office or a referral to our office, either using an incident form or a student of concern form. And again, I'll show you those in just a moment. And then I also usually tell faculty if there is a way that I can communicate back to you what that conversation was and how it went and kind of what we talked about, I'm always happy to do that. And I would also encourage you all, we're really, I think everyone on campus does a really good job of referring people to the mental health resources on campus. But that is once you do that, there's no return information. There's nothing you get back from that as a professor. So I'm not saying not to. 100%, if you think someone needs mental health assistance, 100% refer them to counseling, but also refer them to our office, because we can give them some other tools that maybe mental health counseling won't give them. For example, a mental health counselor is not going to be able to help someone withdraw from a course. They are not going to know the implications of financial aid. They might know some of the other resource kind of things that we have to offer at the university, but in terms of faculty advocacy, they don't do that. They are there to talk about the mental health of a student, and that's it. And there's no two-way street there. Once the student goes to them, that communication between the student and the counselor is confidential and is not shared with anyone. So just keeping that in mind, I think, again, 100%, I do it every day, refer people over to counseling, but know that if the student is going to require some additional resources, it's also probably a good idea to refer them to our office. Elizabeth?
Do the mental health resources people refer these students back to you ever?
Sometimes it's hard. So I'm the case manager, so I do get some privileges that maybe other people don't get. But it's not always, it's not going to happen 100% of the time. But if you refer to both places, it's fine. I can communicate a lot more freely than even the counselor when they're referring a student. So they might refer a student for something, for some advocacy from me, and I will speak to the student, and they don't tell me all of the information that the counselor probably intended for them to. So also that can be a barrier. And so we're trying to streamline that process, but we're, and it also depends on the counselor they get to, right? So some folks are much better at referring students than others. But I always just err on the side of caution, do mental health, but also refer to our office. So a couple of things that I would say in terms of having difficult conversations with students or with anyone really, always do this in private. Set a time to have a conversation about whatever the concerns are. Listen to the student. I know it can be so frustrating, but what I said about we repeat ourselves 15 times and we're being so clear. I don't understand why this person is not understanding me. But sometimes it's just not going to happen, right? That conversation, if you can't make your statement in a different way for that person to understand, then you might need some intervention there. Be ready for the conversation. So I always, especially with students who might be having some suicidal ideation, or if there are specific things that you can point out to them about why there's frustration or concerns, honesty is the best policy. Always be direct and be able to articulate clearly what is frustrating or what your concerns are so that the student understands. Have an action plan. So once you have this conversation, what are you hoping to get from this conversation? Is it that you want the student to stop a specific behavior? So what can the student do instead of that behavior? What would be some, so if a student is always interrupting you, what might be some things that you would prefer the student do instead of interrupting you. What things are you willing to do as the professor in a course? What changes might you be able to make to accommodate this student? And then always, again, if you are referring a student, please tell the student that you're doing this. So again, that honesty piece. And I'll tell you the biggest reason, especially from my area, obviously, if you're referring a student to counseling, counseling doesn't reach out to students for counseling. That has to be voluntary. But for my office, if you refer a student to my office, they will immediately get requested to meet with me. So a letter goes out almost simultaneously to them that says, hey, you need to schedule an appointment with me right now. And I just draw your attention back to the title of my office, which is Student Conduct and Case Management. And a lot of times, especially if you're referring a student who is having some mental health concerns, or maybe that student who is having some food insecurity, they are worried to death that they are in trouble. And so always being honest about like who I am, why you referred them to my office so that they know. And I understand there are some situations that students may have come to you and shared information that they don't want you to share with other people, but you have to because you're a professional and that's what we need to do to get them assistance. So sometimes I know you won't be able to, but there's actually a space on the form to say if you are wishing to be anonymous. So again, I will know on my end who is submitting the report because you actually have to log into the system. So I'm the system administrator, so I see all of that, but I promise you if I can protect your identity, if you're just concerned about a student and you need them to get help, I will protect your identity to the best of my ability. So again, I said I'd give you resources. So the counseling and health services, and I just want to be clear that Let's Talk is online every day during the week for 4 hours, and students can do drop-in counseling, which is really great. They just click on a link on counseling's website and they can wait in a waiting room, and a counselor is on duty for 4 hours every day doing drop-in counseling. This is individual. It is free, and it's a great way to get connected with the center without having to be on a wait list to get in to see like someone for regular sessions. So highly recommend Let's Talk. Again, the Center for Service Learning and Community Engagement, they have the grants, they've got the food pantry, the clothing closet. There's all kinds of stuff over there that students have access to. The SGA Miller loan is an interest-free loan that students can get from my office. So if they are short on their rent money, or they need to go to the grocery store, or whatever, they need gas, whatever the case may be, they can apply for a Miller loan. And the Miller loan is interest-free. It's a 60-day loan. It's basically them borrowing against their student account. So we give them cash the same day. They're able to do their business, and then they have to pay that money back within 60 days. If they don't pay the money back in 60 days, then they'll never be eligible for the loan again. So that's sort of the consequence to that. Obviously, my office, the student of concern form or the incident form. So I usually make a determination in my office about what a situation is. I'll just be honest about that. My student of concern are generally mental health related, or those kind of food insecurity, the things that we might be able to help resource wise. And the incident report is like, this student is being so inappropriate and I need you to handle this situation in your office. And I will show you in a moment where to find that form. And then Student Success Center, again, academic alerts, that's Mary Catherine and Cassandra, I'm giving you a shout out.
Woohoo, thank you.
So, this is the area where our academic alerts are processed, and they follow up with those. So if you alert a student on their platform, they're going to call every single student on that list and try and connect them with some resources on campus as well. And then I always think we leave off our cultural centers, but especially during this time when students are feeling very lonely, are feeling very kind of pessimistic about life, that our cultural centers are open. They have been open through the duration of this situation. They are still doing some programming. Obviously, our capacity is limited, but there are still things going on this campus. And I think the general sense from students is that that hasn't been happening, but we've been here. Student Affairs has been open every single day. There's not been a single day where we have not been in this office. And so I just want to draw your attention to some of those cultural centers for people to maybe start feeling a little less lonely and a little bit more connected to fun things. So we've got our African American Cultural Center, got our Military Student Center, which just opened a beautiful new space across College Street. We've got our Hispanic Cultural Center. We've got our Adult and Non-Traditional Student Center. So there are tons of things for people to get connected. So don't forget about kind of those ancillary areas that might just be some fun, no pressure environments where you can find like-minded people. And I encourage faculty and staff to also be involved in those centers. It's a great way to connect with students outside of the classroom. So if you're down with that kind of stuff, totally recommend our cultural centers.
And I will just give a plug. Our last session that we did was actually an overview of our cultural centers on campus, and all of our directors were there. So you can watch the recorded version of that on our website. It's posted there with all of our other sessions that we've done in the past. And they shared exactly what you're saying, Joe, all of those different programming opportunities. And they also all specified you don't necessarily have to identify with that particular culture or group in order to be a part of that cultural center. So they're there for all students, for the entire campus community.
Yes. So 100%. Okay, so I'm going to show you where to get those forms. I think the easiest way is to you can do a couple of things. I always go through this way, but basically our web addresses are super simple, and you can just put in student affairs, student-affairs, and it takes you to our homepage, but you could also go through the directory and just click on student affairs. And this right here, this little button that says report a concern, it will take you to my page. And that's where you find all of kind of what my office is handling right now. So it's where students can find the COVID-19 form. This is the incident complaint form, and then the care bit form. And I'll just show you this real quick. So you're going to be asked to log in, and it is a super simple short form. So who you are, your phone number, why you're reporting. So you can say whatever, it might be other, the date, location, who the person is you're reporting, and then kind of it's just check boxes like this person is doing some weird things. They've said suicidal remarks in a journal article, and then ask for more kind of context things after that. You can also, if you have emails or text messages from a student that you find concerning, you can attach those using the choose files section and submit, and it goes directly to my office. And that is all I've got for you. Are there any questions? Yay.
I just one observation here, Joe, that to point out that when you submit academic alerts, please don't submit behavioral concerns as an academic alert. Those go to Joe Baldwin. And I don't think we have it open so faculty can make comments yet on those academic alerts, but just if you're having a behavioral concern, really call Joe. And I've had some faculty contact me about behavioral concerns, and I just refer them back over to Joe.
Yes.
Joe,
I've,
are you regular APSU email address, Baldwin J at
It's
APS?
Baldwin J. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have put my contact information up on that last slide.
That's okay. We'll find you.
Sarah?
I've been having a problem for the past 3 semesters with housing insecurity for non-traditional students. So these are students that like can't live in a dorm because they
Or why
have
can't they?
families or they're high schools. Well, the student I have right now that is having housing insecurity has 3 kids and a husband.
We have
So,
family
like-
housing.
You do?
Yes, we
Okay.
do. So yes, so
I
that's
thought that
another
was like just a thing that
dying
happened in
a
Utah.
little bit. So our family housing units are not as full as they used to be. So they've kind of converted some to like multi-student, but we do have family housing. And they actually have apartments open for like 4-bedroom spaces. So the only issue that a lot of non-traditional students have in terms of housing is sometimes they'll have like multiple pets. And we do allow emotional support animals in housing, but we wouldn't allow someone to just go get a puppy and have it around. So there are some limitations, but we do actually have housing that will work for a family of 6 people.
Okay. Well, she's found a house. The problem is that like it was a landlord thing. The landlord gave them a month to move out. And that was at the beginning of the semester. It
Yeah,
was terrible. So then she had to pack up her house, which is horrifying. Like I can't imagine. And then be out in a month and then find a new place to live. But she ends up having a month where she's like staying at her sister's house or something, like
Yeah.
without her stuff. And she accidentally packed her cord. And I'm like, ask to borrow a laptop.
yeah.
It's okay. Get a, and I don't know how far away from campus she is. Or I have a lot of students that just aren't anywhere near campus. Or I've had high school students have housing insecurity.
Are they minors?
It's,
They can't sign a lease. Well, you know,
yeah, it's things like, what?
there are some COVID restrictions on evictions right now, and they're still in effect. I'm not sure how the landlord was able to do that, or if this girl just didn't know.
They were selling a
How
property.
would a minor college student have to have a problem about housing? That might be something for the Department of Children's Services, actually, that no one is taking care and watching after this minor child. So I don't know if you'd want to make a referral to them, because once they get involved, sometimes it's kind of a sticky situation. But I just don't understand how a minor under 18 who would have to be worried about, housing. Are they a high school, like a dual student, or are they?
Yeah, I was a dual enrollment student. They worked it out. It was something like they had to get out of their mom's house and get to their dad's house, complicated with the fact that they also had COVID.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was rough. It was real rough. But they and we had to do an incomplete at the end of the semester, but they ended up finishing it in like a week. So that was like my record quickest incomplete I've ever gotten back. It was a mess. And they
Yeah.
also weren't in, I don't know if they were in Montgomery County or not, because we don't get to see what high school they go to.
Right. Oh, man. All right, y'all. Well, any other questions that I might be able to answer? I hope that's what you were looking for coming to the session. It's hard to cover the gamut when it's only an hour. So if you need anything, I'm again available. My email is baldwinj@apsu.edu. And my extension is 6356. So you can call me, email me, submit a report. I'm usually pretty good about getting right back in touch with someone. Sometimes if you submit a report, I'll have questions before I meet with the student to get some additional information. I know you do, Cassandra.
Wait,
yes.
our office makes a lot of referrals to Joe.
They keep
So.
me in business. So y'all, if you need anything, you have questions about something, please don't hesitate to reach out. Myself or Dean Singleton are happy to kind of help you or navigate conversations with you, and handle those kinds of situations so that you can focus on educating people, right? So that's what we're here for. So you provide the classroom education, and we'll try and help you with the outside of the classroom education. But I really appreciate you all coming and hanging out for an hour.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much. I mean, my main takeaway is when in doubt, contact Joe. Well, thank you. Just to echo what Joe has said, thank you all so much for spending an hour of your day with us. Please make plans to join us in 2 weeks on Tuesday, April 20th at 2 o'clock for our final AP Academy professional development session of the academic year, where we'll have President Lakari here talking with us about looking ahead and what we can expect moving forward. So thank you all again. It's always wonderful to have these great conversations, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. And thank you, Joe, for being amazing and all you do for our students. So thanks, everyone.